Have you ever felt that strange tension when someone close to you succeeds? You smile, you nod, but deep down, something stings. A quiet discomfort, a pang you can't name. Not quite anger, not quite sadness, just something. What if that feeling wasn't harmless? What if it wasn't just a bad day or low self-esteem, but actually a quiet form of jealousy? Not the loud, dramatic kind, but the kind that whispers, that hides behind polite silence, that wears the face of concern, but feels like fear. You don't have to be toxic to carry jealousy. You don't need to lash out or sabotage anyone. In fact, the most dangerous kind is the one we can't admit. The kind that blends in, that looks like love, but deep down doesn't trust. This video isn't about labeling people as jealous. It's about the subtle signs we often miss in ourselves, the quiet clues that our worth has been tied to being admired, chosen, or praised. Friedrich Nietzsche warned that we often disguise our deepest hostilities in the language of virtue, and jealousy is a master of disguise. It shows up in support, in humor, even in selflessness. But underneath is a wound, afraid to be forgotten, afraid to be second, afraid to be not enough. Today, we'll explore 9 hidden signs of jealousy, not to shame you, but to set you free, because jealousy isn't always loud. Sometimes it's helpful, sometimes it's kind, but it's still there, and it's quietly eating you alive. There's a version of jealousy that's easy to spot. Raised voices, possessiveness, controlling behavior. But most of us, we live with the quieter kind, the kind that blends in with everyday life. We smile, we congratulate each other, but inside, something tenses, something compares. You see a friend thriving, and instead of joy, you feel a tightness, a questioning of your worth, a strange desire to withdraw, compete, or explain yourself. But you don't call it jealousy, you call it stress, or insecurity, or being off. Jealousy doesn't always show up with anger. It hides in compliments that sting, in questions that dig too deep, in harmless jokes or lingering silence. And often, we're not even aware we're doing it. It shows up at work, when someone else gets credit. At home when a sibling is favored. Online, when strangers seem effortlessly happy. Anywhere you feel unchosen, jealousy can find its way in. But here's what makes it so painful. The people most affected by jealousy are usually the ones most ashamed to admit it. Because to admit it means facing something deeper, that your worth may have been built on being better, that love has felt like a competition, that maybe you still don't believe you're enough on your own. So instead of confronting it, you protect the wound, through people-pleasing, through control, through quiet judgment of others, or loud judgment of yourself. Why can't I just be happy for them? What's wrong with me? The answer, nothing. You're not broken, you're human. Let's get one thing straight. Jealousy isn't a flaw, it's a signal. It tells you something underneath still hurts, still feels threatened, still believes it has something to lose. Psychologists often separate envy and jealousy. Envy says, I want what they have. Jealousy says, I'm scared of losing what I already have. It's not just wanting, it's fearing. Fearing abandonment, fearing invisibility, fearing replacement. This fear often starts young. Insecure attachment. Maybe love was inconsistent. Sometimes warm, sometimes cold. So you learned, I have to earn love, compete for attention, stay special to stay safe. That child grows up watching others for signs of danger. Not just physical danger, but emotional ones. A partner's glance, a co-worker's success, even a friend's joy. And suddenly the inner voice says, if they shine, there's less room for me. If they're loved, I'll be left behind. In 1991, psychologists Pfeiffer and Wong created the multidimensional jealousy scale. They broke jealousy into 3 types: cognitive, intrusive thoughts and suspicion; emotional, anxiety over imagined loss; behavioral, checking phones, testing loyalty, controlling outcomes. Let's meet Sarah. She's in a good relationship. But when her partner gets a text, her stomach drops. She asks, who's that, playfully, but she's already spiraling. What if they're smarter, more fun, better? She starts monitoring. Not because she's cruel, but because she's scared. She calls it care. but it's fear of being replaced. Sarah's pattern had roots. In her childhood, affection was unpredictable, so she learned to watch every shift in tone, mood, and silence. Now, in adulthood, she's still scanning, still waiting for love to disappear. Dr. Les Carter calls jealousy fear-infused anger. The fear of loss becomes a need to control, and control becomes the mask for shame. Carl Jung called this the shadow, the parts of us we repress. Jealousy isn't evil, it's a message. It says, there's a part of you still hurting, still waiting to feel chosen. Nietzsche had his own warning. He said, when we can't rise, we tear others down, not because they deserve it, but because comparison burns. He called this resentment, a moralizing of resentment. So here's the shift. Jealousy is not a flaw. It's a flashlight. It shows you where you still ache, still long to be seen. And the truth, you've always been enough. You just didn't feel safe enough to believe it. Imagine this. There's a house. Inside is a child, small, quiet, watching, not throwing tantrums, just always alert. That child is you, not your adult self, but the younger version who learned early. Love isn't guaranteed. Attention must be earned. Others are always a threat. This child doesn't hate others. He is just trying to survive. If they love her more, I'm less. If he shines, I'm falling behind. That's not cruelty. It's fear. It's grief. The grief of not being chosen, of feeling invisible, of believing, if I wasn't enough then, how could I be enough now? In Jungian psychology, jealousy is an orphaned self, longing for closeness, fearing rejection. It hides behind smiles. It offers praise, but secretly pleads, please see me too. And that longing turns love into a scoreboard, friendship into comparison. Even joy becomes suspicious. If they're that happy, is there any left for me? Soren Kierkegaard called this disconnection despair, not just sadness, but the sickness of forgetting who you are. When you chase what others have, you lose yourself. You stop asking, what do I love? And start asking, what do they have that I don't? That's the real theft. Not of opportunity, but of myself. Even when you win, it doesn't land. You get the praise, but it doesn't satisfy. Because what you wanted was never validation. It was proof you mattered. Epictetus said, pain comes not from events, but from how we judge them. Jealousy isn't caused by someone else's success. It's caused by the belief that their success erases yours. That belief isn't true. It's a story. Carl Jung believed that what we repress becomes our fate. And when we repress the fear of loss, it turns into control. And control pushes people away. That's the emotional terrain of insecurity. A battlefield where love becomes proof, and proof becomes a weapon. But beneath the armor isn't a tyrant. It's a frightened child, still waiting at the window, still hoping someone stays. So the question isn't, how do I stop controlling? It's deeper. Can I give that inner child a love that doesn't vanish? Can I become the person who doesn't leave me? Because when you do, you don't need to grip anyone else. You become safe in your own arms. Let's pause for a moment, not to push through, but to breathe. Because if this is resonating, you might be realizing something uncomfortable, that maybe you've been performing security while silently drowning in fear, that maybe the strength you've shown was actually a strategy for survival, and that's okay. You adapted, you coped, you learned how to function in a world that didn't always feel safe. But now, you're ready to feel something different. So let's ask gently, not to fix, but to uncover. What's one thing you've done, not because you're strong, but because you were afraid of being seen as weak? Maybe you took control of a relationship. Maybe you belittled someone else's success. Maybe you stayed silent when what you needed most was to speak. It doesn't make you bad. It makes you human. Every behavior has a root. Every mask has a story. And sometimes, healing begins not with answers, but with honesty. So if something came up for you, a word, a memory, a realization, drop it in the comments. Not for attention, but for release. Because saying it out loud, even quietly, is a way of saying, I see this part of me now, and I'm choosing to bring it into the light. What's one thing you've done out of fear, not strength? Drop a word or phrase below if it feels safe. Let it be the first crack in the mask. And if this conversation speaks to something deeper inside you, something you've always known but never had words for, you'll find more in our video. Why you're sad even when nothing is wrong, the invisible cause. It explores the quiet grief behind emotional control, the ache of disconnection, and how to begin feeling without falling apart. And if this feels like your kind of mirror, subscribe. We're building a space where masks come off gently, and truth is met with kindness. So, how do we actually heal insecurity when it's been the background music of our whole lives? The answer isn't loud. It's not found in shouting affirmations into the mirror. It's found in 3 small, powerful shifts that pull us out of fear and into self-trust. Let's walk through them together. Practice 1. The pause before the pattern. Every insecure behavior, whether it's checking your partner's texts, downplaying a friend's win, or crafting the perfect humble caption on Instagram, starts with a feeling, not the behavior. The body speaks first. A tight chest, a racing thought, a drop in your stomach. That's the moment of leverage. Because if you can catch the feeling before the reaction, you can choose a new response. Try this. The next time you feel triggered, pause, put a hand on your chest, and ask, what am I afraid of right now? What story am I believing? Then breathe. Just a few seconds. This creates space between reaction and response. That space is where freedom lives. Behavioral science calls this cognitive distancing, the ability to step outside the loop and see it for what it is. Not truth, just a habit. Practice 2. Shadow journaling. Befriend the ugly truths. Carl Jung believed the parts of ourselves we deny, our envy, our neediness, our rage, don't disappear. They become our shadow. And that shadow doesn't whisper. It leaks out in our behavior, in sarcasm, in sabotage, in silence. So bring it to light. Try these prompts. Who do I resent, and why? What trait in others triggers me most? When did I last pretend I was okay, but I wasn't? Don't censor, don't spiritualize, be raw, be honest. This isn't to shame you, it's to reclaim you. Because what we name, we can heal. And what we accept, we stop projecting. Journaling gives your shadow a seat at the table, so it doesn't take over the whole house. Practice 3. Internal reparenting. The secure voice within. Remember the image of the child at the window. Still waiting, still hoping. That child needs you, because here's the secret. You can't fix insecurity with someone else's love. You fix it by becoming the consistent caregiver you never had. This is the work of internal reparenting. It starts with a simple question. What did I need to hear back then that no one said? Now say it, to yourself, out loud, every day. Things like, I won't abandon you. You don't have to be perfect to be loved. You're safe now. This might feel fake at first. That's okay. You're not speaking to your adult logic. You're speaking to the nervous system, to the child still living in your emotional basement. And neuroscience confirms, repeated self-compassion physically rewires the brain. It softens the threat response. It strengthens emotional regulation. It builds security from the inside out. Let's anchor this in a real-life shift. Meet Maya. For years, she micromanaged every relationship. She'd text constantly, needed reassurance daily. If someone took too long to reply, she spiraled. But through therapy and journaling, she traced it back to a childhood where love was conditional, where being easy earned praise, and being too much got silence. So she started pausing before her patterns. She practiced saying, it's okay to feel needy, but I don't need to act out of fear. She still has moments, but now they don't control her because she's not trying to be perfect. She's trying to be real. And that's the point. Final reminder, progress isn't perfection. You'll slip, you'll react, old habits will resurface. But healing isn't about always getting it right. It's about noticing sooner, recovering faster, and most importantly, responding to yourself with kindness, not criticism. As Paul Gilbert says, self-compassion is not self-pity. It is the courage to face the pain of life with understanding. So if you catch yourself comparing, controlling, or collapsing, don't say, I'm failing. Say, This is my moment to choose, and then choose the version of you that no longer begs for worth. Let's be honest. Healing your insecurity won't feel secure. At first it might feel like betrayal, not of others, but of your former self. The version of you who coped by pleasing, or controlling, or hiding behind humor. That part of you served a purpose. It kept you safe, visible, loved at least conditionally. So when you start showing up differently, when you stop apologizing for your needs, stop chasing validation, stop playing small, your nervous system might panic. It will say, "This is dangerous. This isn't how we survive." And people around you might feel it too. The friend who loved being the strong one might resent your new boundaries. The partner who fed off your insecurity might get defensive when you stop explaining yourself. You're disrupting a pattern. That always comes with pushback. Even Nietzsche warned, "The snake which cannot cast its skin must die." But the shedding hurts. You'll question yourself. Am I being selfish? Am I overreacting? Am I too much now? No, you're just not playing the role anymore. You're writing a new script. One where your worth isn't dependent on how quiet, useful, or perfect you are. But here's the truth. Even resistance is part of the healing. Gabor Mate says, "Not every behavior that feels bad is bad. Sometimes it's a sign you're breaking free from an old survival pattern." So when the guilt creeps in, let it be a signal, not of failure, but of growth. Because discomfort isn't always a warning. Sometimes it's a doorway. There's a quiet moment that comes after the storm, not a dramatic breakthrough, just stillness. It's the first time you don't check their phone. The first time you celebrate someone else's win without shrinking. The first time you say, "I need this," and don't apologize for it. It feels small, but it's everything. Because for once, you're not proving anything. You're just being. This is what it feels like when insecurity begins to melt. Not because you've become perfect, but because you've become real. Kierkegaard called it becoming a self. Not a mask, not a role, but an integrated, honest human being. You no longer need to play the martyr, the judge, the controller, the performer. You become the one who can hold all of your contradictions, your fear and your courage, your envy and your tenderness, your need and your dignity. It's not linear. You'll still get triggered, you'll still compare, you'll still ache. But now, you respond with presence. You don't run, you sit with the feeling. And in that moment, you realize insecurity never made you unlovable. It made you human. Carl Jung said, "Wholeness is not achieved by cutting off a portion of one's being, but by integration." They're not your enemies. They're your signals, your teachers. And when you stop fighting them, you start listening. And when you listen, you come home. So let this be your quiet revolution. You don't have to perform with confidence. You can grow it. You don't have to crush the voice that says, "I'm not enough." You can hold it, look it in the eye, and say, "I hear you, but I get to choose who I become." If this resonates, affirm it by commenting, "I allow myself to feel," or "My truth matters." If you made it this far, pause. That alone means something. You didn't just watch a video. You met yourself, not the polished version, not the confident one, but the tender, unseen self beneath the performance. That takes courage. That's growth. And now, here's a question worth carrying. What has your insecurity been trying to protect you from? Write it down, journal it, whisper it if you have to, because even your most self-sabotaging behaviors were rooted in a need to feel safe, to be wanted, to not disappear. And maybe you don't need to punish those parts anymore. You just need to understand them. In the next video, why you're sad even when nothing is wrong, the invisible cause, we'll explore another silent epidemic, chronic emotional suppression, the kind that leaves you feeling empty, even when life looks fine, because sadness isn't weakness, it's an unprocessed truth, and we're going to give it language. If this episode helped you name a truth you've hidden, hit subscribe, not just for content, but for the community. We're building something rare here, a space where psychology meets philosophy and honesty meets compassion. And if you're someone who usually keeps things inside, consider this your permission slip. You don't have to carry it alone. Drop a comment, even one word. Let us know you're walking this path too. Because in this space, vulnerability is not a risk, it's a strength. Let's close with a line from Epictetus. No man is free who is not a master of himself. Freedom doesn't mean you feel secure every day. It means you choose integrity over image, awareness over avoidance, healing over hiding, and you're already doing that. So keep going, not toward perfection, but toward wholeness, because your truth, it matters, always has.